Hi, my name is GaryLJacobs, and we're here today in Riverhead at Family Court in support for Dr. Carlos Rivera, a pediatrician for over 20 years who has been persecuted by not only his ex-wife, but by the abusive judges in Suffolk County. As you can see by the turnout behind, Dr. Rivera has a lot of supporters. What's unique about this case is they took a doctor who had been practicing as a pediatrician for over 20 years, caring for over 4,000 patients, was paying whatever he could, over $3,000 a month in child support. Yet the judge still thought it was in the best interest of their children to incarcerate Dr. Rivera in Riverhead for 6 months. That's an absolute miscarriage of justice, no matter how you slice it. Not only did he cost the taxpayers of Suffolk County over $100,000 keeping him in jail, it caused him to lose his practice, and now his children ended up being on social services. But let's also not forget all the people that are behind me that have their children go to Dr. Rivera and had to go out while he was incarcerated and find another pediatrician to take care of their kids. A testament to what kind of a doctor and what kind of a caring person Dr. Rivera is that all these people behind me came out here on a 9 o'clock on a weekday to Riverhead to support him, and also took all their children back to see Dr. Rivera when he got another job at another practice. This is an absolute miscarriage of justice. We cannot let it go on. It needs to stop. We need to support Dr. Rivera and show the judges that we will not tolerate the persecution of a loving father, a loving, caring doctor who's doing nothing but trying to get divorced and move on with his life. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and I appreciate all the support for Dr. Rivera, as I know he appreciates it as well.
My name is Sandy Natali. I'm here on behalf of my husband, John, my son, John Anthony, and my daughter, Francesca. We have been with Carlos Rivera since my son, John Anthony, was born in 2003. Loving, caring, attentive, amazing, fits the needs of our children, came to our home when my son ran a 103.5 fever with his family in the car. That's the kind of person that should be in jail? That's the kind of person that you want the world to be deprived of? I'm going to tell you, any other doctor would have told me to take my kid who was sick to an emergency room and have them exposed to further germs. That was out of the question. That's the person you want taking care of your family. That's the kind of loving father he was to his children. To be dragged through these courts to waste public service time is an atrocity. This has to stop. It's only right. Carlos Rivera is a good man. The community needs him. Our families need him. And I certainly know that the Natali family needs him. Please stop this injustice.
My name is John Keel. Dr. Rivera's been my children's pediatrician for the better part of 7 years now. I can't attest to paternal issues or divorce issues. What I can attest to is that he's an amazing doctor. He's an amazing guy. Loves his children, loves his patients parents, and it's just heartbreaking to see what he's going through. And he deserves a lot of support.
My name is Nancy Soma, and I met Dr. Rivera, 2002 maybe. I met him for an interview I needed a new doctor for my children, and he sat for more than an hour and didn't charge me. And I discussed with him my children's problems, and he was more than happy to sit and talk to me. And I thought he was a very nice man, and then I brought my children in to meet him. And it just worked from there. He was a great doctor, very caring, and it wasn't about how many minutes he spent with them. He could spend all the time in the world with them to make them feel comfortable, to make me feel comfortable. And we really need him in the community. He is a great doctor, and I wish that he would see adults because I would go to him. He's an excellent doctor. And we really need him, and what's happening to him is awful. And I love him, my children love him, and he is a wonderful man and a good doctor. Thank you.
My name is Serena Policia. Dr. Rivera is the doctor to my children, twins with autism. They're both 12 years old, nonverbal. I can't say enough about this man. He goes above and beyond. We first met him, obviously, when he was my doctor, but he just seems to be such a sweet person. He does everything above and beyond what a normal doctor would do. He's really like a family friend. No one can possibly have him as a pediatrician and not include him as a family friend automatically. He so many times has come to my house. My children have had meltdowns. One particular time, my son had a complete overload meltdown in the office in the beginning of the exam. I couldn't control him. Dr. Rivera scooped up my son, brought him into the parking lot for me, put him into my vehicle until he calmed down. And actually what was very sweet too was he wasn't just worried about my son, but he was worried about me and my safety and made sure that I got home okay with my son. He's just a beautiful person. He can't be replaced. What's done to him is a travesty. I had no idea that the family court system could treat somebody like this, a man like this. I don't know, I guess that's all I can say. We all love Dr. Rivera. I will fight tooth and nail for him. Thank you.
My name is Melinda Obator. I've been a patient, not me personally, but my daughter has been a patient of Dr. Rivera's for the last 4 years. I have lost my husband 2 years ago, and Dr. Rivera, when I had my second daughter, he came to my house and did a home visit due to my husband having chemo and not being able to be around other sick children. He also, from there, has proceeded to help me and my daughters because I did lose my husband. And we became friends and family with him. We go to his house, we hang out. I've seen his kids, and they are so happy when they're with him. I don't think that any woman should stop any father from seeing their kids if they actually want to be involved in their lives. You have fathers out there who could care less and walk away. He's not a deadbeat. He's an amazing father, an amazing person, an amazing doctor. And I just would like this to stop so that I don't have to worry about my child having to have another doctor other than him. I don't like when he goes to jail. My kids are affected, and they're the ones that get hurt in the whole process, and she seems to not understand that.
Hi, my name is Maria DeLeo. I'm here today in support of Dr. Rivera. I've known Dr. Rivera for many years. Actually, his ex-wife, along with him and all their children, were at my wedding back in 2002. So my history with them goes way back, and I just continue to be baffled at her behavior and her decisions that she makes throughout this difficult process. And I'm very disappointed in those, and that's why I'm here to support him today. He's a wonderful man. He's been, I have 5 children. He's been our pediatrician for many, many years. And I myself am no stranger to the family court scenario. I've got 2 children with my ex-husband who are now 21 and 18. Years ago, he was working with the airlines when September 11th happened and ended up getting laid off subsequently because of the airline downfall after September 11th. And for 3 years, I didn't get a penny in child support from him because he wasn't working. And continuously, the people at Suffolk County Child Support would ask me if I wanted to pursue getting him incarcerated. And I was baffled by that. I would never put my children's father in jail. It was just so obvious to me that that was not in their best interest and what that would do to their self-esteem, not even considering him. I mean, he wasn't my best friend, but he was someone I cared enough about at one point to have children with, so why would I do that to him, regardless of our differences at that point? And that was never something I would do to my children. So how she could make that decision is just very confusing to me and disheartening. And it actually got to the point where, 3 years went by with no child support. My ex got a job. And after a few years of continuing with child support with the agency, I just decided enough is enough. This isn't normal. We're human beings. We are people. We once had a relationship. We should be able to work this out. And, obviously my oldest is 21, but it's been several years now where we've just worked it out between ourselves. And if I need money for the children or, cost of living, he takes care of it. And I just have those conversations with him. And obviously it took time to get to that point, but I think that adults can act like adults and come to an agreement that's reasonable for both parties. And again, I was someone that did use the Child Support Enforcement Bureau, so I do understand that need. But I don't understand incarcerating someone who is obviously not a criminal. Thanks.
Hi, Elisha and Jerry Bozzi.
We're here in support of Dr. Carlos Rivera. We've been friends with Carlos for
Ever?
30 plus years. He's a great guy, someone who is our confidant, someone we turn to first, someone who we expect to always be there and is. And we are here to support him because we feel he needs fairness. He can only get so much from somebody. You cannot get blood from a stone. And we believe he should be treated fairly and equally to every loving father should be.
Yeah. $13,000 a month is a lot of money for anybody. I mean, it would take 2 or 3 people to make that type of money, let alone one guy giving it to, it's for his family. But,
How much
that's
do you
a little
really need?
in excess,
The papers need to go through and look through, and people need to see and realize what the truth is in this situation, and truth will prevail. And Dr. Carlos is an amazing person, Eagle Scout, all the best friends that you can ask for. He's number one.
Yeah, he's always there for you when you need him. All right, we love you.
Hi, I'm Tracy Funicellis, my daughter Amanda. Carlos has been our pediatrician for my 4 children since my 12-year-old was 13-year-old was born. He is an amazing, loving, caring person, has always been there for us. It's a travesty what's happening to him right now, not being with his children, much less our children when we need him, as well as his own children need him. And this is an injustice that needs to be taken care of. And we're heartbroken and devastated for him because he's just such an amazing person and he's there for us at all times. She was recently in the hospital while at college, and he was on the phone with me constantly checking on her and make sure everything was going well, and always available to us, and he needs to be vindicated. He's a great person, and we need him. His kids need him, and we love him. We love him a lot.
My name is Melissa Shea, and this issue is so much bigger than Dr. Carlos is, as great of a man he is, but it's so wrong to take a parent away from a child. The courts are supposed to look out for the best interest of a child. There is no justice when you take a child away from a parent, and especially incarcerate them. We need to support the change in the family court system and give children the opportunity to love both their parents by changing it to joint custody. I'm here to support Dr. Rivera and all this, and I really hope that you take this to heart, because this could happen to you.
Hi, I'm Don DeRoche from FAIR New York. It's www.fairnys.org, and we're an organization that helps people in family court and family law, and we're trying to make a difference. And I'm appalled at the situation with Carlos Rivera being sent to jail. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for him. It doesn't make any sense for his family. It doesn't make any sense for the people of New York State. He was put in jail, and the people of New York had to pay for him being in jail. In addition to that, his family is on welfare because he can't support them, especially when he's in jail. So we really need to make some changes, and this is not a good situation. In 1865, we adopted the 13th Amendment, which, as everyone knows, abolished slavery and debtor's prison. Carlos went to jail for being in debt. That's the same thing as being in debtor's prison. We need to make changes. I support Carlos 100%. We got a win today, which is great, and I will support him on his march in 2015 in May. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris DiMaggio. I'm the host of FIT TV. I do weekly programming on families in transition. This is what I do. And this case is one of the most outrageous cases I've ever seen. But there are many others like it. We should not forget that the family court, which is what we're standing right in front of, is not really a family court for families. It's really for those people that want to produce more income for what they have. It's just about them keeping up their business. It's not about the best interests of children. As a matter of fact, it blows the best interests of children out of the water. So I want to thank everybody for coming. It was a great show, a great turnout, and I hope that this helps Dr. Rivera get back his life. Thank you.
We support Dr. Rivera!
I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. How'd say? But thanks. Thanks. I realize it was hard for all of you to make the time to be here. And it's been a privilege to be with your families for all these years, especially now. So I just want to thank you. And I got to get it straight. So I'm going to read something now that takes a while. Gary tried to get me to write something short, and I couldn't help myself. So I timed it. It's about 15 minutes if I don't slow down for anything. So I hope you could just bear with me, okay? The past 6 years have been the most painful experience of my life. I've suffered greatly from a system that I once trusted with the faith of a child. I've since come to find the matrimonial law and family court are two systems rife with flaws. It is a prosperous cash cow that feeds on the pain and the destruction of families. It generates over $50 billion a year. In the end, it leaves individuals bereft of savings and of hope. As lawyers charge $450 per hour to instigate adversity between individuals navigating through a painful and stress-ridden period. I look back and still cannot comprehend the sequence of events that led to my personal cataclysmic experience of biblical proportions. I had never claimed to be a good businessman. My passion is the privilege of being a physician and to do my best for the families that I serve. The finances at both my home and my pediatric practice prior to my divorce were handled by my ex-wife. When I signed my settlement agreement, I faced a trifecta of misfortunes. After suffering a major depressive episode, I was ousted from a successful practice by my former partner. Within 2 weeks of a hospital admission for depression, I next faced the loss of income and an inability to procure a business loan due to the real estate crash. My ex-wife exploited the opportunity and coerced me to sign a punitive settlement under threat of supervised visitation with my children. Though I was represented by counsel, I was not aware of the fact, that the contract bound me to paying 95% of my income. My lawyer never informed me or forewarned me of the consequences I could face in the event of being unable to sustain a $15,000 per month agreement. I was now obligated to pay. Furthermore, without further explanation, my attorney instructed me to sign a clause that freed her of any liability for a contract that she herself drafted. Without startup funds, I managed to open a solo practice with personal loans from the families I served. Many of you here today, and I'm truly grateful for that. Despite the grassroots efforts and compassion of these wonderful people who are here with me today, the practice quickly spiraled into bankruptcy. As a solo practitioner, I was unable to generate my former income. I lacked the capital to expand the practice. My fiancée Jamie and I struggled to run a medical practice while desperately trying to comply. Eventually, we were unable to evade an avalanche of debt. The situation became terminal when in October of 2012, my medical malpractice policy was terminated for repeated late payments. I was devastated by this event. The stress and depression became insurmountable, and I suffered yet another major depressive episode. I found myself admitted to South Oaks for depression. Upon returning home, I was left with no option but to close my practice. It would be too risky to practice medicine without malpractice insurance. Now my troubles were exponentially worse. Without income, my children would certainly suffer. I soon realized I had no choice but to return to work and practice without medical malpractice insurance. My ex-wife, who refused to seek employment herself, chastised me for late payments on her utilities. She failed to recognize that her utilities were always paid before mine and the practice's. Jamie and I were unable to purchase home heating oil and began to use diesel fuel to heat our home. We routinely faced utilities being turned off for late payment. Phones, water, electric, cable TV, and cable internet. The office suffered greatly as well. I could not afford vaccines and supplies. Again, the cable TV, phones, and internet at the office were shut off as well, on more occasions than I care to admit to. We scrambled for loans from Jamie's ex-husband to reinstate office utilities. Now think about that for a moment. This man cares so much for his wife and children that he readily spared the little he had to help us. He even loaned money for heating oil for my ex-wife and children's home. He's truly a wonderful and benevolent man. And I am deeply indebted to him. Things continue to worsen. I've learned from experience that when friends try to reassure me that things couldn't get worse, I correct them and say, no matter how bad it is, it can and will get worse. Just watch. Sure enough, it did. My ex-wife would repeatedly rant about my inability to sustain her lifestyle. Though she failed to seek employment to contribute for the care of our children, she was exempt from any financial responsibilities while I was held liable for $15,000 per month.
That would be $180,000 per year to be able to be my ex-wife. My financial loss paled in comparison to being alienated from my children. I am able to weather the humiliation of what I have been put through. I came from a poor family, so returning to poverty was never something I lamented over. Alienation from my children has been the worst punishment I have ever faced. How does divorce entitle the mother to monopolize, or any parent, to monopolize access to your own children? I have been denied my opportunity and right to be a father. It's a painful irony to have parents tell me how their children play doctor and imitate Dr. Rivera at home, yet be kept from my own children. It is painful to receive drawings from these children that I care for, and I collect more paintings from them than from my own beloved children. My own children have been brainwashed into believing that I care more about Jamie and my replacement children, her two daughters, than them. My children are forbidden from speaking Jamie's name in their mother's home. Furthermore, there is no evidence of my existence in their home. They are forbidden to mention my name in the presence of their mother's relatives, and they most certainly cannot answer the phone in the company of these same relatives. They are clearly being subjected to emotional abuse. How is this behavior in the best interest of the children? People often tell me that children will come around as adults or when they have their own children. To this statement, I reply, imagine I take your children from you, subject them to years of rhetoric as to what a horrible person you are, then return them to you in 20 or 30 years from now and try to reassure you that eventually they will see through it and upon their return will still love you. What could ever assuage the bereavement of a parent whose child has been cruelly kept from them? I try so very hard to enjoy the precious time I have with them, but 6 years later I still cry when my time with them flashes by and I drive home from returning them from their mother. The challenges continued to worsen in 2013. My ex-wife would take me to family court for my inability to sustain an astronomical child support and maintenance payments dictated by my divorce. No thanks to my original attorney, my stipulation of settlement is so absurd that it left me completely vulnerable in every category. In a wholehearted attempt to provide for my children, I agreed to pay for more than the law stipulates and more than individuals with much more lucrative careers. My child support and alimony payments grossly exceed those of colleagues with more children than I have who generate twice my peak income. I'm obligated to pay more child support and alimony than Halle Berry, the Hollywood superstar, and last I checked, I made a hell of a lot less money than she does at the peak of my career. Next, I turned to an attorney whose children I cared for as a physician. I was relieved that such a local legend would represent me in court. Despite the fact that I retained him with money borrowed once again by Jamie's husband, I was sent to court with his associate. Despite my pleas, he continued to assign me his associate. Of course, the trial went horribly. My worst fears were greatly exceeded when I received the maximum penalty allowable. After sentencing, I would later find out that the aforementioned attorney submitted my financial paperwork to my ex-wife's attorney for discovery, but did not submit the same information to the court as evidence. In essence, the court was never provided proof of my inability to sustain $15,000 per month payments. People often ask me for my ex-wife's attorney's name. I quickly quipped to these requests, her attorney wasn't that good, it's just that mine was that bad. Though I've been told by numerous lawyers that my representation was clearly negligent and undisputed legal malpractice, I cannot find an attorney to represent me in a legal malpractice case. His negligence resulted in the loss of my practice and 6 months incarceration in Riverhead Jail. For the following 6 months, I was kept from my children and allowed phone calls on the schedule that my ex-wife dictated and further decreed that she would monitor the phone calls and hang up if she determined that the conversation was upsetting to our children. It was a horrible experience. It will remain a gruesome and painful scar for the remainder of my life. However, sunlight occasionally returns. During my incarceration, some of my wonderful friends that are here today informed my fiancé of informed my fiancé Jamie of a legal reform advocate, GaryLJacobs, a wonderful and kind man who is the single most selfless man I've ever met. GaryLJacobs, with the additional help of the Americans for Legal Reform, began to advocate on my behalf and pave a way for representation and justice. GaryLJacobs, along with the invaluable help of Don, Carl Lanzazera, Carl Ross from Americans for Legal Reform, and Chris DiMaggio of Fit TV, have pulled me from the depths of despair and have given me the strength and resources to continue a fight which I considered lost. Their help, along with letters of support from my family and my friends here today, helped me to endure the emotionally painful months in jail. Above all, my fiancé and best friend Jamie never faltered. She has always been my greatest support and most tenacious ally. She somehow miraculously found two individuals who would provide me with the opportunity to return to the community that I love and serve. Dr. Audrey Chong Gale and her husband Humphrey Gale, upon hearing of my plight, offered me the opportunity to work for them. I had lost all hope of returning to medicine in the tri-state area and once again had been granted a miracle. Despite the fact that my incarceration resulted in what I call professional leprosy, people sympathize with me, however, don't want to come near me with a 10-foot pole, Dr. Chong Gale and her husband Humphrey ignored the advice of numerous other physicians to hire me. They've been told he's a wonderful doctor, but the situation is toxic, and I wouldn't hire him in my practice. In fact, the very first time I met them was as an inmate in the Riverhead Correctional Facility. Now imagine this. Their first impression of me is in a crowded and loud jail visitation center while I'm wearing a bright orange oversized jumpsuit that says inmate boldly across my chest. I thought even for me that this was a surreal event, and I just couldn't believe it, that this is my first impression and probably the most interesting job interview I'll ever have in my life. After 6 long months, it took another 6 weeks before my ex-wife would allow me to see my children. That is, after I was released from prison, it took another 6 weeks for me to see my children. It took another 4 months to procure a malpractice insurance policy. Thanks to the 6-month addition to my insurance gap policy that once cost $15,000 per year, that same pediatric malpractice policy now costs $38,000 per year due to the insurance lapse because I was unable to afford my insurance premiums while trying to sustain an agreement that was financially unreachable. My policy now costs more than board-certified ER physicians and almost as much as board-certified adult cardiologists practicing in Manhattan. This situation has crippled any attempts to procure a moonlighting job. My astronomical malpractice insurance costs has made my candidacy for additional employment impossible. And truth be told, as my luck would have it, I was sued for the first time in my entire career during this lapse in malpractice insurance, and now I am forced to face a malpractice suit without legal representation and without funds if and when they are awarded. The fun continues. My $6,000 per month child support obligation was increased to $9,000 per month at 9% interest while I was incarcerated. Contrary to popular opinion, my incarceration did not vacate the arrears of the judgment that was assigned. It continues to accrue at 9% interest to this day. After 6 months, my arrears totaled $250,000. But wait, it gets better. Upon completion of 6 months in jail, Child Support Enforcement increased my child support obligation to $13,500 a month for my failure to pull $250,000 out of thin air. Of course, my ex-wife enjoys pouring salt on wounds and requested that Child Support Enforcement revoke my driver's license. It wasn't enough torture and humiliation to borrow cars from patients' families. Now I had to get a restricted driver's license to travel to and from work. Initially, my ex-wife refused to release my children for visitation unless I was chauffeured by a licensed driver. She eventually eased off this punitive restriction when my daughter expressed that she wished to move in with me and Jamie. Naturally, my ex forbids it, but she did lift the chauffeur requirement for the time being. However, she did pursue a new punishment which brought us here today. Despite 12 years of education and 13 years experience in private pediatric practice, I now make $66,000 per year. Remember that my employer has to pay an astronomical malpractice insurance fee in order to have me work for her. Furthermore, my employer operates at a loss every day thus far because the practice has been slow to rebuild. I once saw 45 to 50 patients per day. Now I see 15 to 20 patients on a good day. Not enough to cover the cost of having me work for them or to cover office overhead. Of my $66,000 salary, Child Support Enforcement garnishes 65% of each check, leaving me with $348 per week for housing, food, gas, and visitation with my children. This is equivalent to $69.60 per day, or $8.70 per hour, which is 70 cents above the current minimum wage in New York State. So despite 12 years of education, for which I still owe over $130,000 in medical school loans, and I can't currently pay them, 13 years of private practice, I now make more than half of what a day laborer earns in a day. Actually less, because the current day laborer rate is $125 a day as opposed to my $69.60, and they get lunch, which can't be pizza. So even though my ex gets 65% of my salary, I find myself in court today because she alleges that I willfully failed to pay child support. In her mind, I should be able to pay her what I owe her and then some. So I get to live below poverty level and ride my 10-year-old motorcycle to and from work, irregardless of weather, as she gets 2/3 of my salary to supplement the part-time job she was forced to get from social services after she had me incarcerated. Yes, you heard me correctly. Having never in her life driven a used car or any vehicle more than 4 years old, she drives a truck worth greater than $36,000 a year now, as I borrow cars from patients so I can have visitation with my children. Despite the absurdity of my predicament, I now face the possibility of another 6 months incarceration for the same mounting arrears I already served time for. At my current salary, it will take over 22 years to satisfy the child support enforcement debt if every penny of my net pay goes to child support enforcement. Excuse me. I have no doubt whatsoever that this is the path my ex-wife will pursue, and what amazes me just as much is how no one in her family points out the destructive consequences of her actions. They are more resolved to pursue collectively malicious prosecution against me than the welfare of the children involved, let alone the astronomical costs the taxpayers must burden to incarcerate an individual that prevented a burden on the system. I would like to point out at this time now that in order for child support enforcement to collect 9% interest on a $250,000 judgment that I would have been given, it cost the taxpayers $160,000 in collateral damage between my children now requiring Child Health Plus state insurance, my ex-wife being on social services, 9 employees being unemployed and on unemployment. Some of them also required services through public assistance. And my incarceration was $225 per day just to have me jailed with bank robbers, gang members, and felons. The only person who has the power to stop this madness is my ex-wife. She had the power to have me incarcerated in the first place, and she also has the power to have me released at any point. Instead, she made sure I be kept from Jamie and our 6 children for the entire painful duration of 6 months. She also has the power to vacate the astronomical arrears that I face. I know better than to ever dream this will occur. Family court will continue to turn a blind eye to gender prejudice and malicious prosecution for as long as they can prosper from this financially. Every word of this is an unexaggerated truth. Many of you standing with me now are part of this elite mass of individuals destroyed by divorce lawyers and family court. For me, the damage is done. I've been alienated from my children, I've suffered indescribable humiliation, and now I'm forced to live below the poverty level on Long Island. I now live with the threat of alternating half the year as a free man and the other half as an inmate, all because I got divorced. I beg of you and anyone who views this post to request that to question the system and demand a change. I pray that one day matrimonial law and family court become regulated and falls under the jurisdiction of a governing body that is not exclusively comprised of lawyers. I fear any institution that governs itself because historically, such institutions fail miserably at this task. The victims need to unite if we truly want change. Family court is governed by officials that we, the peasants, vote for and elect. It is easy to silence and ignore us individually, but if greater than 1 million people get divorced each year, the numbers become harder to silence and impossible to ignore. I implore you to educate yourself. Research the information posted by Americans for Legal Reform. View Fit TV. Watch documentaries such as Divorce Corp or Romeo Misses a Payment. As for me, with Jamie at my side, I will continue to fight with GaryLJacobs and the Americans for Legal Reform. If I'm a free man on May 21st, 2015, the anniversary of my incarceration, I plan a march from Montauk to Manhattan to raise awareness for parental alienation and the atrocities occurring nationwide in family court. I plan to walk 20 miles per day, then spend each night on the way with a victim of parental alienation or family court abuse and video document their story. I hope to be joined along the way by others affected and post a video journal. Hopefully one day, I will be a stone in the path to justice. Thank you.